everyone, I'm Shelby,
Mm-hmm.
and welcome to this week's episode of Disabled Chick Diaries.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Disabled Chick Diaries. Disabled Chick Diaries not only speaking about our lives, but also other people's lives as well, and teaching you guys different perspectives. So, with that being said, please welcome Ryann Kress.
So, hi Ryan, also known as chronically Rye. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and explain your condition and things like that?
Absolutely. First of all, thank y'all for having me.
Mhm.
Like I said, my name's Ryan. I am 29 years old. I run a platform on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook. I'm missing one. Oh, I just got that Clubhouse thing. I don't know how to use it yet, but it's on there. My platform's called Chronically Rye. It started out just kind of as a diary for myself. On Instagram, just to kind of talk about my life living with a disability. And then it has blossomed into a disability advocacy platform. I was actually born with a rare disorder called Ehlers Danlos Syndrome, or EDS for short, because it took me about 10 years of diagnosis to learn how to spell it. But so EDS affects every part of my body. It's a collagen disorder where my body creates collagen that's basically made out of silly putty. And your collagen is the glue that holds everything together, makes up your organs, your skin, your joints, everything. I am a wheelchair user from EDS. I have been for the past about 2 years because my hips, knees, and ankles no longer support me when I walk. Very, very flexible, very, very hypermobile, lots of dislocations. You know, all the super fun stuff.
Yeah.
But on top of running Chronically Rye and speaking about disability advocacy, also I work as a registered nurse. So I speak about getting more disabled bodies active in healthcare because it's like one of those places where it totally makes sense for us to be, but we're just not. And a bit of human sexuality and sex education because my degree before I was a nurse was in human sexuality. I have lived about 27 lives.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, I am Miss Wheelchair Virginia. I was for 2020 and also 2021. Thank you. I have a crown and everything. And with that, I do even more advocacy and travel around my home state of Virginia, speaking about all of the above, but primarily disability advocacy at the state level, as well as disabled bodies in healthcare. And I think that is the fastest I have ever managed to tell my whole story in one segment.
Well, that was all amazing.
Yeah.
And I just want to say that when I saw you last summer, I was like, oh my gosh, she is so cool.
Yeah.
Y'all making me blush. Thank you. My mom jokes that it comes from the fact that I am so ADHD that I cannot sit still at
Yeah.
all. I must have 75 irons in the fire.
Uh-huh.
As y'all will know, trying to schedule with me is almost impossible.
Well, you did it twice, so.
Yeah.
That's how we needed it. It worked out.
Everything was that. It's fine.
Exactly.
So with you being a nurse, I'm sure your experience is different from other people's experience, so can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, definitely being a nurse and being disabled has been both a blessing and a curse at the same time, for sure. So let's see, I became a nurse about 8 years ago. Oh, 8 years ago. I had not done that math in a long time. Oh my God. And then I had been working in healthcare now for, hold on, 16, 17, 18, 13 years. Okay, I need a new job. No, I'm just kidding. I started out as an EMT in like a volunteer EMT when I was 16 in high school. And ironically enough, a lot of things in my life happen because someone dares me and tells me that I can't do it. So I just am like, well, all right, let's add to the list. Let's go. And
Right, yeah.
working in healthcare was no different. I had grown up, with a disability and being in and out of the doctor's offices and I was in the ER constantly. Because I wasn't diagnosed until I was 16 or a little after 16. So we didn't actually know that there was anything wrong with me. We just thought that I was a really clumsy kid. Lots of head injuries, lots of dislocations, lots of supposedly like sprained and like destroyed ankles that were just all EDS that we didn't know about. So I was constantly in my local ER to the point where my mom made a comment one day and she was like, hey, if you're going to continue being in the ER, like you might as well get paid to push the stretcher. And she still says she was joking, but I took it very seriously. So I went and I got my EMT license. Did not expect to like it as much as I did. Just immediately loved it. And back then I was young, 16, and I didn't really make the connection as to why I had an easier time connecting with these patients than my coworkers. I didn't quite know. So then I went to college, continued working as an EMT all through college, working towards my degree in human sexuality. But once I graduated with that degree, I taught sex ed for Planned Parenthood for a little while, and I always say that, there's only so many times that you can teach middle school boys to put a condom on a cucumber before you kind of want to kill yourself.
Yeah.
So, like, all right, I miss the blood and guts. I miss being at the bedside. Like, as passionate as I am about sexual education, I missed nursing. So I came home and I went back to nursing school. And then about the same time that I started putting myself through nursing school, I was working as a CNA on night shift, going to school full-time days. And that is when the stress that I put myself under, I know now, caused my disability to progress further. I didn't have any trouble walking. I could still get around, but I had a lot of trouble with my blood pressure being really low and things like that made it difficult, but not impossible to nurse. So I hid it, continued to hide it all through my nursing school, did not show anybody until there was one day where we were discussing disabilities and they showed a picture of a circus contortionist and they said, hey, there's this really rare disease. You guys will never see it as nurses, but it's called Ehlers Danlos Syndrome. And they kind of look like this. I said, or like this. And ended up standing up in front of my entire nursing class and dislocating both hips on command.
That's wild.
So if you're wondering why I can't walk now, it's because I did way too many of these circus things then. No.
Yeah.
I worked as a ER nurse all through the beginning of my career. Once I'd been doing that for about 5 years and my disability got worse as far as my mobility. I was at the end of it all. I was wearing ankle braces, knee braces. I had an ACE wrap that I'd wrap my hips. And I had something else, but everything was underneath my scrub, so you couldn't tell. And my ER had grab bars all the way around the perimeter, so I could fake it like nobody's business. But it got to the point where I was afraid that a patient would fall with me, and it would be my fault. And, the opposite of nursing. So I took myself from the bedside and got a job in case management that I'm still in. Where I help with discharge planning, putting people in nursing homes, medical equipment, that kind of thing. And it wasn't until my job in case management that I was openly using my mobility aids at work. So I was in my wheelchair. I still am full-time at work completely. And going from people thinking that you're perfectly ambulatory to being in a wheelchair like 2 weeks later.
Yeah,
we're like, what? I still get, well, when will you get better?
Yeah. So,
this is it. Okay.
Like, this is it for me. I don't know what to tell you.
So as much as it broke me to have to leave the ER and start this new job, I found my relationships with my patients, because of my disability, were so completely different than what I'd experienced before. I mean, my patients were, one, happy to see me, which, generally you're not happy to see people when you come to the emergency room. So that was a cool change. But also, I got so many comments about how, I was the first person during their hospital stay to actually roll into their room and talk to them on their level and not be, hovering over them and saying a bunch of things in, medical speak that they're expected to just understand. And I work in a really rural area. We get all of southern West Virginia and all of southern Virginia, which is it's just, the education system's not as great here. And there's a lot of people who just couldn't afford to go to schools. So there's a lot of teaching that comes with it, which is something I love to do. So at first it was difficult because every patient comments on my wheelchair. Every single one. I roll into their room, they're either going to make a face or they're going to be really confused because they won't think I'm a nurse, because there's no way a nurse could be in a wheelchair in a million years, not in their brains. And then it's been cool to get that opportunity to educate and be like, oh yeah, no, I'm still here in my chair. But I'm still your nurse. Yeah. Like I had a patient today, actually, that I was helping get discharged, and he's like, oh, did you come in here to take me down to the front lobby? Why are you sitting in my wheelchair? And I said, well, that's because this is my wheelchair.
Yeah, this one's mine.
And I only give rides on Thursdays. So, you're out of luck, dude. I don't know. I'm going to have to find you another one.
Yeah.
So I love that aspect of getting to a lot of these patients of mine, they've definitely never seen a disabled nurse before. Yeah. But a lot of them have never seen a person in a wheelchair before, that they can have a conversation with. And so getting to be that person and y'all have seen my platform. I address most things with sarcastic humor because it's all I know how to do. And that makes it, something that can be very scary and very difficult to talk about, so much more approachable to everybody. And so I think that's what's made me a better nurse all around, because I have gone through exactly what my patients are going through and know how much it sucks to be in that position, and talk to them like someone who understands and knows that it sucks, but that I to make it better.
I've been in the hospital many times, and it's very rare to have nurses or doctors to serve you who actually understand what you're going through.
Yes.
So
it's I'd said it before, but that in my hospital, if we have a patient in a wheelchair and they don't know what to do or how to, say they went to surgery and they have a power chair and they don't know how to work it and they can't drive it, they call me as the somehow I have become the wheelchair expert because I am in one kind of wheelchair. They called me to do that with a power chair the other day, and I'm like, I don't have a power chair. Yeah. I figured it out. It wasn't that difficult, but it's just so funny because there is in even medical education in my in nursing school, you get a week, at least in my program. Every program's a little different, but from what I've done with nurses, it's all mostly the same. A week to discuss disability, not one disability, all of them. And you remember the sticking points. You remember the things to look out for in certain disabilities and things that, if spinal cord injuries are above a certain level, you're going to really be looking at pneumonia, stuff like that, but not, thinking about this is a person who lived their entire life in this manner when you are not around, and maybe you should treat them as such.
Yeah.
Disability is so complex. And I've never been assigned from people that are saying about medical professionals. They just see you as disabled and you just like, oh, this one is.
It drives me nuts. I'll be in rounds or something, and I'll have a patient. They'll pop up that'll be like, oh yeah, this patient is, wheelchair bound. Like, all right, whatever. This is not the time or the place to have that conversation with you. But they'll just see that on a chart and say, okay, that means I have to do everything for that patient.
Yeah, that's not true.
So not true for 99% of wheelchair users or people with disabilities. And I mean, almost all of us, even if, physically we're not able to do so, most of us can manage our care verbally or some other way that we're going to say, okay, I've been in this body for X amount of years. You've known me for 30 minutes and you have a nursing degree. That does not make you an expert on my disability, and that does not make you an expert on my body.
I can't tell you how many times that I had the doctor's nurses like try to tell me how I need to do something, and I'm just like, no, that's not how I do it. Like, I have been doing this for 24 years. That is not how I do it.
Yeah.
So either you have to listen to me or just to me.
Yeah.
Like,
It drives me nuts when, like, I have nursing students. I make sure, like, especially now, because I know as a new nurse that I was that way because I wasn't educated on a lot of disabilities. And it wasn't so much that I didn't give my patients the chance. It was just, it felt very intimidating. And I remember having a classmate, because I had a patient with cerebral palsy, totally alert and oriented patient, just kind of hard to understand at first. You can just keep talking, it's fine. And so I went in there, and I'm in there having a full-on conversation with the dude. And, like, we're talking about how he does things at home, things that would help me as a nurse. And my classmate comes in to me, and she just goes, well, I mean, the board said total care, so why were you even asking him? I said, why was I even asking him? Because he's alert and oriented and able to make his own care decisions. And until somebody proves to me that he can't, or he starts making crazy decisions that maybe I'm going to second guess, then I have to follow my patient.
that's the same thing with me. Like, I'm total care, but I can totally direct someone on how to help me.
Yeah.
And a lot of doctors, they don't talk to me. They talk to my caregiver or my mom.
Yeah.
Whether it's with me, like, no, like, talk to me.
I remember when I was in the hospital, like a year or two ago, a nurse came in and said to me, I was in the hospital for pretty bad pneumonia. Actually, we're not sure what exactly it was. It was really bad lung infection or something. I have suspicions it was COVID, like before it was even here. Yeah. But it was weird. I was in the hospital for 6 days, and a nurse came in to me and said, are you still alive yet? Are you still alive? Like, joking. And I was like, no, you don't do that. I could have not been alive a few days ago if it would have gotten much worse. I was septic. Like, yeah, she said, you still alive? And my mom was so mad.
That's what?
Why would anyone think that's okay?
I don't know.
Ever in a hospital. Ever. Like, it better be your first day on the job or like horrible excuse because, oh my God, if I caught one of my students. No.
Yeah, you still alive? Yeah, unfortunately for you.
I don't know if it's been like this with y'all's experience. Like half the time when I'm in the hospital, I am the only like young person on the ward. And so like my nurses love coming to my room, but it's also very obvious that it makes like just the existence of my chair, because like I, for the most part, unless you really know me, I can pass as able-bodied out of my chair. And so when I'm laying there in the bed and they don't see my chair in the corner, treat me completely differently than when I'm in my chair or they see my chair next to the bed. I just had surgery this past fall, and it was an intestinal surgery that's normally for older people. So they were all my nurses were like, what are you doing in here? I'm like, I don't know, I'm here for surgery. So by the end of all of this, one of the ways I was going to be discharged for the hospital was they needed to do what's called an ambulation trial to make sure that I could walk. Okay, well, that's a joke since I don't really do that outside of the hospital for more than like 2 or 3 steps. So I was like, I don't think I really need that. I just need my chair. And my friend was bringing it from the car. And they were like, okay, we'll get physical therapy to see you. Like totally uncomfortable, not know what to do with me. The physical therapist comes in the room, and I got lucky because she worked at my home hospital that I worked at. And she goes, wait a second, like, aren't you a case manager from across town? I'm like, yes, I am. She goes, aren't you in a wheelchair? Yes, I am. So how about we just don't do this? I said, that sounds like a plan to me.
Yeah.
But then it kept me in the hospital a whole extra day because no one would listen to me about my own care. So I can't even imagine, Rachel, what you go through, and just it's ridiculous. And like you guys were saying about not even talking to you, I had never experienced that in my life because I didn't start using mobility aids until I was in college in my 20s. But even, I mean, being like 19, 20-year-old with a cane, people would talk to the other people around me. I'm like, it's a cane.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Like, yeah.
I said this on our last recording. I'm gonna say it again. If you work in healthcare, if you're a nurse, a doctor, I don't care who you are. If you're Joe Schmo off the street, you go into somebody's room, you talk to your patient. You talk to that patient until somebody tells you that they can't understand you. Hey, I'm their caregiver. They will not mind. They will say, excuse me, hello, I will help with their care. But until you get that word, absolutely not. I don't care if they're unconscious. You keep talking to them.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I actually had a similar experience after I had my back surgery. I had scoliosis surgery when I was 9, and usually after you have that surgery, I go to the home to rehab, and obviously I can't walk. So at the time I was 9, so my parents were like, why does she need to go to rehab if she can't walk in the first place?
Yeah. That makes no sense.
And as the case manager that would have walked into your room, no, that's ridiculous. I've had to have that conversation with doctors before because they're like, what? No, this patient I had one up that long ago that had been a quadriplegic for years, and had hip surgery. And they wanted to now I was going to set up with physical therapy. That's different. But full on rehab admission. Patient's completely alert and oriented. Patient's like, no, I'm in my 80s. I'm in a power chair and have been for most of my life. No, that's not how I want to spend my time. And the doctor, but that's what we do. This is healthcare. It's not one size fits all. And I think that like the way that in America, the way our healthcare system is built, it's built as if we are one size fits all. And it's not until you have a healthcare provider that is willing to say, wait, that doesn't make any sense, that something changes. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. So I wanted to also talk to you a little bit about how you've been dealing with COVID being a disabled nurse.
Yeah, so it definitely has changed everything I know about healthcare. So when I first started out, when COVID first happened, my office was on what would become my hospital's COVID unit, or one of them. And so I remember we set it all up, and I mean, they like put in whole new air filtration systems. It was, at the time, it was just like the craziest. It looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. Like all these hoses and things hanging off the sides of the hospital because each room had to have its own air filtration system.
Wow.
And usually it's called a negative pressure room, and it just means that none of the air that is breathed into that room will be recycled through the hospital. So it's immediately taken outside of the hospital.
Okay.
So most hospitals, your floor will have maybe one negative pressure room on it. we needed, 50 plus. So
Yeah.
they completely overthrew. It's the craziest thing I'd ever seen. And then it took us a while to start getting patients because just like everyone else in the world, we were convinced it was just the flu.
Yeah.
How wrong we were. But I was concerned just being high risk and being
Mhm.
somebody that is at the bedside with these patients. My hospital was pretty quick to say that case managers, we don't have to go in and be one-on-one with these patients. We can call them or call family members, but we're not to be at bedside. At first, it was honestly, to ration PPE than anything,
Yeah.
because we didn't absolutely need it. So we did that for a while, but there's definitely been moments where I have been more fearful than other people, obviously, without the same risks. Just because, I do have a weak heart and I do have all this connective tissue issues that I'm susceptible to pneumonia, and that's,
Yep.
What COVID really causes
Yeah,
most of the time. Yeah.
I have had pneumonia probably 20 times in my life,
Mhm.
upwards of 20 times, and this past year when I had it was nothing like I've had before. And I don't know what it was, but it really put me out. I have restrictive lung disease as well as the pneumoline, like Rachel. I don't know if those obviously go hand in hand, but I'm not sure which one causes the other or if it even works like that. But yeah, I have really crappy lungs too. So this is my worst nightmare. COVID is. It's I have to be on my guard, completely, because it could take me down like that. And someone tried to tell my mom that I would be fine. No, you don't know me.
No.
Yeah, you don't know me. You don't know what my medical history is like. Don't tell my mom I would be fine.
Absolutely. And even that, I've seen completely ambulatory, no medical issues, young patients get taken down by this. So no, we had no idea what we were dealing with, and we still only have the beginnings of an idea. And it feels like the treatment protocols are changing constantly. We're definitely getting better, but it's weird in that sense that it's not my first outbreak, because I worked during what we thought was going to become an Ebola outbreak a few years ago. And so I remember doing all the trainings and everything for that. Yeah. But Ebola is a disease that, we have worked with, we have studied, we know the disease process, we know what it can do. It's awful, but this we don't. And so there was so much, mixed information, just like it was for everybody else. But, we're right there at the bedside. And I had a really hard time with it because the rest of the world is being told to quarantine, and the rest of the world's being told to, you're high risk, you need to watch out for everything, you need to do you need to wash your hands, you need to stay away from everyone, stay home. And working in healthcare as somebody in the front lines, I don't have that luxury. So I have to preach it as a disability advocate, but I also have to watch my friends who work in jobs, my ex worked in radio, and I remember we were just trying to travel to his hometown, and his job wanted to know where we were going, how long we'd be there, and they looked up the COVID numbers there and compared them to ours, and that was going to tell whether or not he needed to have a test done or needed to quarantine, which was an amazing policy. I was like, wow, okay, for radio, you don't even come into contact with people, but okay. And then whereas my job, I have to this day never been tested for COVID by my hospital, because we were short for so long that if you were exposed, they were only testing people who they were known exposures. I had one, and I remember the nurse that called me basically trying to convince me that I wasn't exposed, even though she was calling me to tell me I was exposed. She wanted to say, oh, you probably weren't in the room that long. Oh, you probably weren't close to the bed. And from what I gather from a lot of healthcare workers, that is kind of the norm, because we're expected to treat our patients, but as far as our population, totally shafted. And so that has been the most, between that and just the fact of working with a disease process that does have such a high death rate. And so you like trying to care for these patients that you know will probably not be here tomorrow, and trying to give them the best end of life care when you have 6, 7 other patients to do the same for. None of them have family members. None of them have caregivers. It is just you. That is the hardest part. And that's why I've seen so many healthcare providers leave healthcare completely. And it's been nuts. But I think it has also helped us find a lot of holes in our healthcare system. And
It makes me so mad when people just like don't care, or don't act like it's as serious as it is, because here you are sitting telling us that you see people die every day, and they're just, oh, not my problem. Like, it just makes me so mad. Like, people who think it's not a serious situation.
Yeah, like at this point and everything, they've seen it. They've seen what it's done.
Right.
Like, and so, I mean, I will have patients on the COVID unit whose neighbors are dying, and they're still, I mean, I feel okay. It's not that bad. I'm like, you're in the hospital with COVID. Yeah. Like, when was the last time you were in the hospital with the flu? I promise you, it wasn't lately. Not you, Miss Fuller oriented. Yeah. So it's been really hard, but it has definitely reminded myself and a lot of us why we got into healthcare.
Yes.
I think everyone's in the healthcare situation.
Second it.
When
When we had travel nurses like leaving our hospitals around here because nobody is paying like critical pay or any of that, the hazard pay, that's what it is. I'm like, how are you not paying your COVID nurses hazard pay?
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, so that was, I think they are now, but at first it was, whew, that was bad.
Now I want to talk about your Miss Wheelchair Virginia crown, how that all came to be. I want to hear about that.
Yeah. So I had never been in a pageant my entire life. Definitely was not. I was a tomboy growing up. I have a photographer friend who shoots a lot of the local pageants, and he reached out to me and he said, hey, there's going to be a pageant in a couple weeks. It's a wheelchair pageant. You should go out for it. I'm like, all I heard was pageant. I'm like, I'm thinking like, you know, the little toddlers in tiaras, like that's what I'm picturing. I'm like, if you make me wear a tulle skirt, I will kick you. And my legs barely hurt, but I will do it. Like, I looked online and I was like, all right, it's an advocacy-based pageant. I said, all right, let me see what this is all about. So I didn't know the difference between the poster said Miss Wheelchair Virginia 2020. This was in November of 2019. So I thought that I was applying for next year's competition, and maybe they were giving you a year to prepare because it seemed like a very big deal. And I was like, okay, I have a year. So my friend calls me on a Sunday. The pageant is scheduled for the next Saturday. And he said, hey, would you mind being a judge for this Miss Wheelchair Virginia pageant? I said, sure, but I'm signed up to do it next year. Like, I want to make sure that's not going to get in the way or be a problem. And he's like, no, it should be fine. Let me check with the organizer. My pageant director immediately calls me panicked. And she's like, I'm sorry. I thought you were competing on Saturday, and we only have 2 other people competing, and we need somebody else, and please compete. And I'm like, okay. If you think I can throw together an entire pageant in a week and like maybe even have a shot, sure. She's like, you'll be fine. Like it'll be great. Just go. Okay, no pressure. So for the pageant, we were required to write a speech based on a platform that we would be advocating for the rest of the year, usually. We had interview questions with a panel of judges. And then we had to create a board about our lives. Basically, you could do it any way that you wanted, but I made mine tons of pictures of myself doing, playing sports, doing whatever I did with my friends and everything, just to kind of show, I'm not just this girl in a wheelchair with a crown on my head. This is my actual life, and this is what it looks like. So I worked it's really hard to get this thing going, but ended up being awesome. Got there, we we competed in a church, which is not somewhere that I am the most comfortable in the world, just because of being, a hippie and gay and like all these things. So I was like, okay, this is fine. Well, the church didn't have a ramp for the wheelchair competition, which still makes me laugh that we could not actually get on stage. But it ended up just being fun anyway, because we had more space and it was perfect. But I remember having to give my speech, and I worked so hard because our speeches could only be 2 minutes long, 2 minutes at the most. And I like to talk. I don't know if anybody could notice, but that was difficult for me to write a speech and make it 2 minutes. And so I had it up there with me, and I'm like sitting there shaking. I'm like, okay, I'm reading my little speech. I couldn't see because I was shaking and I was so nervous that I was just like, all right, no speech. Ended up cursing in the church because they asked me about my sister, and I said that she always, they asked who like my biggest source of support was, and I said my sister, because she has never seen my disability, and she's always told me to just get the fuck up and get over it. And I said that in the church, and I'm sitting there just like, well, so this was fun. So it was a cool experience. So when they called my name, I was just like, I'm sorry, what? There has been a mistake. You have picked the wrong disabled chick. But turned out great. And so now, the past year, my first year of reign was 2020. And so I traveled, the first half of the year, traveled all over the state of Virginia, speaking, advocating, all kinds of stuff, getting to try out tons of adaptive sports was super fun. Went skiing for the first time. It was terrifying, but also very fun. And then COVID hit, and so we kind of had to find another way to do this. And I found out a lot of other title holders just kind of took it slower and didn't really do as many speaking events. I took that to mean that I could do more. Yeah. And so was just booked constantly doing as many speaking engagements as I could, because I had never really done any disability advocacy work before, just maybe through my platform a little. And then because I'm a nurse, it's kind of, I have to be for others. But I found out I love it. And I found out I love public speaking and getting to get up there and like not only be a public speaker, but be really transparent and really real with people, because I feel like you don't get that a lot. And like even in this business where you think you would see that more, people still put on like this front. And I mean, that's fine. There's a lot of like people are trying to, not everyone wants to share every single little tiny detail of their lives on the internet like me. But because that's what I have chosen to do as far as my health goes, I don't know. I just found out that I really loved it. And so after COVID, they asked me if I wanted to extend my reign because they'd been really impressed with me. I said, absolutely. So I got to keep my title for 2021.
That's amazing.
Thank you. So it is. It's pretty cool. I'm getting to do some more speaking engagements. Still trying to line those up because it's early in the season yet. But then in August, I will compete for the title of Miss Wheelchair America. And then if I got that, I would have another year of advocacy, but this time it would be all over the continental U.S.
Yeah.
So that would be so cool if it happened, but
yes,
I'm just having a ball. I didn't expect this platform to come from it. I didn't expect to make the contacts that I have, and I've definitely will continue to advocate, and I would eventually like it to be my full-time job.
Yes.
Is cool, for sure. So yeah, that's Miss Wheelchair. The most important thing I've learned is how to put a crown on my head. Way harder than I thought. That is so cool. I did not know that. I don't know how.
That's amazing, Rachel.
Yeah.
You should have won.
I don't know.
It's okay. It's fine. Okay.
Advocating, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'll buy you brown.
I still do the things on Instagram, so I'm fine with it.
I would like to go out for a pageant one day, but I don't know if I don't use a wheelchair full time, or like even not even when I'm going somewhere walking kind of far, I use a walker. So I don't even know, do they have Miss Walker USA?
I've been talking about that since I started this, because so with Miss Wheelchair, the rules were so we did have to sign a contract when you won, and your contract states that you use a wheelchair specifically for 100% of your activity in the community.
Yeah.
Well, because I can stand and I can walk short distances and I live in a studio apartment, I do not, I use my chair a little bit at home, but if I'm, feeling good, I will walk. And because I've been doing social media for so long, I had all these old pictures of me from modeling and stuff when I could stand a little easier, and I would throw my leg braces on underneath like a skirt or something where you couldn't see them, and then have my chair just out of frame. And I got in a lot of trouble for posting those because they're like, you're Miss Wheelchair. You're not supposed to be posting something of you standing. Which
I know so many people who use wheelchairs with no whole time.
Right?
Like,
yeah, I had a really hard time with that.
Yeah, I would too, because like
I was like, I don't know how I feel about it. And so now we're working to change that rule, just because there isn't another pattern.
I feel like it's also like limiting who can compete. Like
Yeah.
there's so many other people that would probably want to do it. But they don't qualify because they don't use a wheelchair all the time.
Exactly. And I mean, when I was told that, like, I mean, I was so new to it. I'm like, okay, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm going to try. But I'm not going to lie about my abilities either. Like, that seems wrong. And then, like, because, I mean, right now I'm not in physical therapy, but, if I was in a physical therapy program and was trying to regain mobility, if that was a thing, because that is for lots of people with disabilities. And then what if, it's during your reign and you do get a little bit of that back? Do you sacrifice that and pretend like you can't for this crowd? So we are currently working on that in the Miss Wheelchair world. But yeah, like you said, there's just not another real option. And for the kids, we have not of the same vein or anything, but I got invited to judge, and that's why I know it exists. But Miss Abilities contest, Miss and Mr. Abilities, but they don't have anything for adults or little older than that. And so I just think, like Rachel, like you said, you're definitely limiting who can compete for this, and kind of by like I understand why the Miss Wheelchair pageants exist. So the history of Miss Wheelchair America, it was actually created by a physician at a rehab institute, kind of similar to like Shepherd Center, or one of the big ones like that, in Ohio in the 70s. I can't remember which date exactly, and I know I should know, but pageant people that may be listening to this, but this year is the 50th anniversary. Yeah, so we've been around for a long time, but as far as the bylaws and things, there's not a lot that has been changed, which is why there is a Miss Wheelchair USA pageant as well, and they have their rules are not quite as strict, and they were created in the 90s as kind of a different form of the same sort of pageant to celebrate, people with disabilities and show that, we can and do speak up for ourselves, and giving us the opportunity to have a platform and speak about something like, that affects us our entire lives.
I know you mentioned you to model. How did you get into modeling?
So I actually got into modeling as a kid because my grandparents were both photographers. Not not anything professional, just on the side, and they would end up shooting like weddings and things like that. And so we would shoot that, and they would always kind of just shove me in front of the camera and be like, okay, we're going to test lighting with you, so just stand there. And I'm like, okay, I'm a kid, whatever. And so I was constantly just being thrown in front of cameras for them to test equipment and everything. So I was very comfortable there. I also think it's pertinent to mention that I was also raised by nudists. My grandparents were nudists, and so we... Yeah, I just realized I don't think I've ever said that on the internet. You guys win. The first people. Because, so, like, I mean, this is from birth. My grandparents were registered nudists before I was born, like card carrying, the whole thing.
You have to be registered?
So, that is the number one question I always get. Yes. But only because it's to keep people who are not registered and paying dues and things like that from being total creepers at nudist resorts. So you have to be registered, you have to pay dues, it's a whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah. Other than going to resorts, if that's your kind of thing, you're never going to use the card. But I just think it's hilarious when they would be like, oh, yeah, we're card carrying nudists. I'm like, but where do you carry the card? Yeah, so the combination of always being in front of the camera and being very comfortable with my body, because I did have this weird upbringing where I'm surrounded by... I have to always say, there was absolutely nothing sexual about my upbringing. Everyone was just naked. That was it. And so I got very used to all different kinds of bodies and realizing that all bodies are different. And so that, blessed me growing up as a girl, because you're going through puberty and you're like, I hate everything that's attached to me. I have this other, okay, I know that there are tons of bodies out there and mine just looks like me. So when I got a little older, and my friends started kind of getting cameras and, wanting to test them out in high school, I'd be like, oh yeah, sure, I don't care. Let's go. We'll go out in a field somewhere and shoot some pictures. And so that turned into me creating just a collection of all the times that I had done that and making a portfolio. And I don't even know when I started putting it out there, but there used to be a site, it still exists, but it's not as active. It's called modelmayhem.com. And it was basically Facebook for models and photographers. You had to be really careful because there's creepers on there as well, just like anywhere else on the internet. But it was where I started actually booking paid jobs and doing more of what I wanted to do, not just whatever my friends needed help with. And so I've now been doing it regularly since high school. So over 19 years, and love it. I have so much fun with it. And it was always kind of something that I just did because my friends needed somebody and it was just kind of fun for me. But then I really got into modeling more steadily about the same time as I started transitioning from my cane to forearm crutches to a wheelchair. And so I'm not only doing that, not only did I lose with EDS, when I was in high school and college, I was also a dancer. And so that was dance and theater were a huge part of my life. And EDS took that away pretty early on. And so I was always, in the back of my head, I missed performing. And where I got a little bit of that back with public speaking, it's not really the same. But through modeling, if I want to model in my chair, which I usually do, because you don't see enough of that out there, I can, model in my chair and show that, disabled bodies are sexy and disabled bodies can show off whatever we want to show off and, do that or, show up to group shots. I always I'm in a modeling group where we always do Halloween shoots every year. And so I'm like, I'm going to do this in my chair. So if you want me in it, then I'll be in my chair. And so then you have these really cool, witchy coven shoots that you see everywhere. But, oh, hey, there's a chick in a wheelchair there. There's a little bit more, representation.
Yeah. I'm going to do a boudoir shoot for my birthday this May. And it's my first, professional photo shoot. Anything like that, and I'm really, really excited because I would like to get into modeling too. I don't know how or when or why, and I don't know if I'm even Like, I've got a real asymmetrical face, and I don't think they like that, but...
What? Yes, they do. See, the thing about modeling now, in this, like, we are in the coolest time.
Yeah.
Suddenly difference is being seen as this, like, sought after thing, whereas for most of our lives it was not.
Yeah.
And so definitely, and I've found it so much easier to book jobs over the past 2 to 3 years than it has ever been. Just even because back then when I walked with a cane, I would say that and they would freak out and be like, "We have stairs." I'm like, I can still go upstairs. Fine.
Yeah.
Freak out.
I'm also funny because I just don't know how.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah. That's
And
the hardest part.
you don't see many novels with disabilities. I'm okay. So every time I think about it, it's like, oh, when you have a child, companies even worse to hire me. I don't know.
Yeah.
The biggest piece of advice that I can say is just, I mean, we also are in a wonderful time of social media. So, you know, that iPhone camera can go a really long way at first, for sure, to kind of get you used to angles, get you used to how the light hits your face and seeing what works best for you. Mirrors, oh Lord, mirrors. With my disability specifically, because everything's so loosey-goosey, I can't tell where my body is in space unless I see it. So I always have to warn photographers. I'm like, hey, if something looks wrong, just tell me, I'll put it back. I just don't know. Like, just a warning. And I've found so many more photographers are willing and want to work with people with disabilities and want to do that, but they also don't know how and don't know how to address that. And I mean, even though, like we've been saying, you know, we're going to take most of the struggle from you, all you got to do is just tell us when and where and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just something, again, that's unknown and therefore intimidating. But yeah, no, you guys, are you kidding me? You guys would both be like amazing in the modeling world for sure. You're both gorgeous and ridiculous with makeup. Just like, screw you both. All right, I can barely work. That's awesome. I think that
Aw,
would,
thanks.
see, I keep telling people, I'm like, I am going to one day, I'm going to create a modeling agency and I'm going to take all these people that I want to be in my modeling agency and we're just going to kick ass on our own and leave everybody alone.
Yes. Absolutely.
Right? It would be so much fun. Like I want to do like a massive like disabled body shoot and I think it would be so cool. Like I keep telling people, like, right? Like, have you guys ever seen the ESPN bodies issue?
Yeah.
Every year. So it's basically what it is it's just all of these different athletes of all different shapes and sizes that they just put in black underwear. And they say at the bottom, like their height and their, like whatever their sport is. And it's just them standing next to each other. You know, sometimes they'll do more than that. Maybe they'll do like a nude photo shoot or something, but it's literally just a celebration of bodies and all of their differences. And I'm like, I want to do that, but with disabled bodies and like this array of all different kinds of disabilities, from sight to hearing to mobility. Like, I think that'd be so cool.
That would be awesome. I'm totally down for that.
Let me know when you do that because you have helped me.
Yeah, me too.
I was smarter, I was younger, and I was here.
You're both within driving distance of me. I can make it happen.
Absolutely.
I'm going to figure out how to take photos or drag a photographer with me and be like, let's go. We're hitting the road. I got bodies to shoot. Come on. That's what I'll do under the guise of Miss Wheelchair America. I'll win that and then have to travel anyway and just be like, I'm already here. I might as well take some.
Might as well.
Yes. I love it.
It has been so great talking to you, Ryann.
Thank you. It's been great being on here.
Yes, you are so funny and so cool, and we love you.
Love you guys too. I'm so excited to listen to the rest of y'all's episodes when they come out.
Yes.
Thank you for joining again.
Of course. Thank you for having me on again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. That's fun.
Bye.